I'm going to ad-lib.
Yeah, no worries.
I wrote it. It's
I know
too long.
No, that's totally fine.
So
I
I'm
should send you a
ad-libbing.
shorter one, no worries.
Yeah. All right, folks. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about our speaker tonight. It's Anna Curtin. She's right here behind me. And she grew up in Georgetown. I did send an email a little bit about her. But let me just tell you that she studied at the University of Texas here in Austin. And she studied biology with a concentration in ecology, evolution, and animal behavior. She's cool, right? She did some other things that I'm not going to go into, it's too long. She did her master's degree at the University of Montana. What was she doing up there? Okay.
I don't know.
At Montana. And her work there, Montana, focused on the habitat use of rare and cryptic bird species. The yellow-billed and black-billed cuckoo. So, now you understand, Anna is a cuckoo expert. She works now in San Antonio for the Texas Parks and Wildlife as an urban wildlife biologist, right? And guess what she wrote to me about what she does in her spare time?
Bird. She's a bird.
You better believe it! That's what she does in her spare time. She birds. So, what is wrong with this woman? She's a bird. She's a cuckoo expert. I was so glad to find her, and I want you all to give a warm welcome to Anna Curtin, and let's find out about her.
All right, yes, hello everyone. I'm very, very happy to be here tonight. And yes, during grad school, I was known as the cuckoo student. That was what they called me. So before I dive into my talk a little bit though, I just kind of want to get a sense of y'all. So I know y'all are all gardeners, but how many of y'all also think of yourselves as birders? Can I get a show of hands? Okay. So a few birders, all right. How many of you guys have no clue about birds? You couldn't tell a cardinal from a blue jay. You're not really sure, know nothing about them. That's totally fine, totally fine. How many of y'all have seen a bird before? That's everyone. Everyone should have their hands up. Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about birds and how they relate to gardens, birds within gardens, and bird watching. So I'm going to start off with the basics of bird watching, so the who, what, where, and how. Talk a little bit about urban birds to kind of give you all a sense of what kind of birds might be in my garden. And then talk about some local bird species that we have here, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And then I'm going to talk about how we can share the world with the birds around us and some takeaways you can have from this talk to do so. So first, I'm going to talk about the basics of bird watching. And the first question is, what is bird watching? Is it throngs of people all standing around to get just a little glimpse of some like gray and brown bird? Is it a bunch of people who have these like really pricey cameras and gear, scopes that probably cost more than some people's college tuition? Is it waiting for hours and hours to get a glimpse of a rare bird? Is it guided trips in these remote, far-off places? And the answer is yes, it can be that. But I define bird watching as any time you take a moment to stop and look at a bird and try to look and gain more insight on that bird, whether or not you're trying to figure out what type of bird that is, or whether or not you're just trying to say, hey, what is this guy doing? Like, what are they up to? And just taking a moment to pause. And so thinking a little bit about who is bird watching. And the short answer to this is everyone, right? Everyone is generally curious about birds. Everyone loves to see birds, but we've seen some recent shifts in the type of people who are watching birds. And a lot of this was driven during COVID, when people were stuck at their homes and having nowhere else to go. They stopped and looked around and they saw the birds that were visiting their yards, visiting their feeders, and we saw this really cool spike in interest about birds. The other thing is there's a more recent trend that younger folks are also getting into birding. So there was a film called Listers that came out, I think earlier in 2025, and it's a movie that was produced by two guys in their 20s who spent the year traveling around trying to find as much birds as they could. And it has millions and millions of views. And then it's also the hot girl hobby, right? It's been like, there's this new trend of it, and there's a lot of different folks that are starting to look a little bit more closely at birds. And then I want to talk about where is bird watching? Is it this remote, pristine areas? This National Wildlife Refuge in the top right corner is where I did a little bit of my graduate research on cuckoos.
Where's that? Where is it?
Montana, yeah. Montana. yeah. So there are cuckoos somewhere in that river valley, and it was my job to find them. And so yeah, it can be these areas that are really far out and really hard to get to. But it can also be really close to home, right? It can be within gardens, within urban areas. Some of the best places to go birding, and the birders probably know this, are wastewater treatment plants and landfills. Places with a bunch of trash, places that don't smell very nice. There's some really great birds out there, guys. And one of the things that I really love about bird watching is that it's a really easy way to get access to nature. Everyone can do it. You don't have to be able to hike miles and miles. You can do it from literally wherever you are. And I really love that because it is a chance for absolutely everyone to learn more about nature and take a closer look at the world around them. So I want to talk a little bit about what gardens provide for birds, and this all centers around the idea of habitat. So food, water, shelter, and space. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in the next couple slides. But I want you all to have this idea of gardens are part of the urban ecosystem, which is something that we think of in ecosystem as something that's, again, like far out in nature and things like that. But urban areas are an ecosystem as well. There's a lot of wildlife, a lot of creatures living in those urban areas. So moving on to the next section here, talking about urban birds. So the type of birds that you're going to find within your gardens depends on a couple of different things. One of them is the local ecoregion that you live in, and I've pulled up a map of that. Let's see how this fancy pointer works. Aha! Here's your map of the ecoregions of Texas. And different people have different numbers of this, but there's generally around 10 of them, right? And where we are today is within the Blackland Prairie, which, sorry, colors are weird right here. Purple? It's kind of, the pinkish purple area, and then the post oak savanna, which is the kind of like purplish blue color.
Can you point that out?
Yeah, so Seguin.
Yeah. No.
Oh, I'm pressing the wrong button. There we go. So, Seguin, if I can stop my hand from being so shaky, is like right about here. So we are right where the Blackland Prairie and the post oak savanna kind of meet, right? There's a couple different ecoregions in this area. And I'm sure that affects, it does affect the types of plants that do well and grow well in these regions. But then it also depends on the surrounding area. So how much urbanization or how much like natural areas and open spaces are there around us? And wildlife reacts to urbanization in one of three different ways. There are animals that do really well, and they're able to exploit these urban areas. A lot of these animals are ones that you'll only find within urban areas. Other species are able to adapt to them. So they are found out in natural areas, but they also do really well within urban areas. And then other species avoid them. You won't find them within urban areas. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those three. So raise your hand if you've seen this view before. Beautiful, yes. Yeah, I heard someone say great-tailed grackle. Yes, so that is a very, very common bird around here. That's one of the birds that we have, the great-tailed grackle. And can someone take a guess? Can someone raise their hand and tell me, what do you think makes this bird do really well within urban areas, within parking lots even? I got one in the back, yeah?
Tail is vertical rather than horizontal.
Yeah, so that's a really good way to tell that it is a grackle versus another type of bird. They do fly with their tails kind of in like a V shape, so that's a really good feature to point out. Anyone else have any thoughts on why they do well in urban areas?
They're not afraid.
Oh, sorry, I'm gonna have you up on here in the green.
They're scavengers. They're really good at finding any food anywhere.
Yes, as you can see, they even eat French fries.
French fries.
Yeah. Any other ideas? Yeah. Any other ideas?
They're not skittish.
Yeah, they're not very skittish. I have almost like stepped on them before, and I've been like, "Why are you not getting out of the way?" They're very, very used to people being around.
I've seen them walking around and pick up like a big piece of cardboard and flip it over to look at.
Yeah. They're also very smart, right?
See
so
them
they
do-
know how to
they're
problem
like
solve.
velociraptors.
Yeah.
They're dinosaurs, man.
Yeah, totally. Yes, they're in the back.
And closing, I got to the point where throw a couple of grapes to them, and so when they were go in and come back out, and they get my car.
Yes.
They got used to me doing this.
Memory, right? They're like, that's the grape lady right there.
We got trouble.
Yes.
Hey, just one other thing since you showed HEB. So our HEB in Lavernia, we used to have trees in the parking lot. And they got so fed up with the birds in the trees and dropping. And so we cut down all our knives. Those were oak trees. The oak trees were up near the front. Everything had, and the other thing the manager would do, I kid you not, he would walk around with firecrackers, little firecrackers, and he'd be tossing them at the birds. I go, dude, what are you doing? He goes, well, I can't shoot my gun, so I'm using firecrackers.
Yeah.
And so they got fed up and cut down all the trees in Lavernia.
Sure, yeah.
This is about 5 or 8 years ago. We cut
Yeah, and so, and that is a really great point. That is something that I deal a lot with in my job, is there's a lot of conflicts that'll come up whenever you have birds within urban areas, right? Not everyone wants their car to be covered in droppings, right? And so, yeah, there is a lot of people that have a lot of strong thoughts on it. And so part of my job is figuring out how we can find that balance between people with different views and what's best for the animals and what's best for the people as well. Yeah, do we have a question?
Yeah. Do you at the Wildlife Center always use cannons to scare some of them birds off?
So we don't use that. Yeah, that would be more of like cities that are doing that direct management within birds. But yeah, they do use like loud noises. They're fireworks called poppers and screamers. That's the actual name, and they are used to kind of help scare birds out of areas where humans don't want them to be. So yeah, all of y'all had really great answers. These are a lot of birds that are not scared of humans. They're really open to using human sources of food and shelter and things like that. They're not very territorial. They don't really care if there's a bunch of grackles there, right? Like they're like, come on, man, it's all good. They live in large groups, right? They don't migrate, so they're there throughout the year. And then, as someone mentioned, they're very, very smart. They're able to use whatever they have on hand. Yeah, do we have a question?
Do they have a natural predator? Where are they on the food chain?
Yes, yeah. So.
Cluster?
Yeah, they're eaten by a lot of different things. So they have different predators at different stages of their lives. So the grackles that are in the nest will actually get eaten by nest predators. So that can be snakes, that can be other birds. Blue jays really commonly prey on other birds' nests and eggs. And then whenever they're fledging, it's an awkward bird that's learning how to fly. So any animal that's either on the ground or moving around is able to pick them off. And then whenever they're adults, they're actually, one of their main predators is other birds also. So falcons, and then we also have Cooper's hawks and other hawks that eat other birds. So yeah, they have enemies too, even though it's kind of hard to tell when there's 1,000 of them in a parking lot. But I also want to put up this picture here because we think of them as kind of one of our trash birds. They're everywhere. They look kind of grungy, but they are a native species, right? They are a native bird that has learned how to live with humans really, really well. And when they're not, covered in parking lot dust, they are very, very pretty, right?
They are very pretty. They're iridescent.
Yeah, very, very cool looking birds. So now let's talk about birds that are good at adapting to humans. So these are birds whose natural habitat is mimicked by human processes and what humans are putting out. And so the Canada goose is a bird that I'm sure you've all heard of. And I've seen them out along rivers, and they're raising their young and their goslings along these like wild riverbanks, and they really like grassy slopes that have like a gentle slope up to the water. Can anyone tell me where else you find grassy slopes leading to waterways?
Golf course.
Golf courses, yeah. Where else? Public parks? Yeah, a lot of like housing areas. Humans really, really like this type of area too. And so humans, by creating areas that we really like, have created areas that Canada geese also really like. So it just so happens that the things that humans are building are what the geese are looking for as well.
Yeah, they eat grass.
Yeah, so there's plenty of food there.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, and then there are also certain species that avoid urban areas, right? Species whose habitat is just not found within urban areas. So this is a northern bobwhite quail, and what they really count on is this kind of matrix of different plants and different structures. So they need these woody areas to provide them shelter, places where they could hunker down whenever a hawk or a predator comes by. They need open grassy areas for nesting, and then they need forbs and kind of lower growing areas for food and to rear their broods. There's not many places within urban areas that match that very well, right? There's a lot of just plain lawns, or there's like single trees with not a lot of undergrowth around it, right? So you don't really find that within urban areas, so you don't really find bobwhite quail within urban areas quite as much. Okay, moving on, I'm going to talk about a couple of the backyard birds that you can find around here, focusing on the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just if there's anyone who's worried about this guy on the right here, that is a northern cardinal, and he's fine, he's healthy. Whenever they molt, so they switch out their feathers once per year, cardinals lose it from the top down. So they have a bald head for part of the year, and they look really, really silly. So yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how you tell what type of bird it is, what type of bird you're looking at. And so one thing that a lot of people want to start with is the color. Like what's the color of the bird that I'm looking at? But I always try to tell people that it's really best to start with just generally what's the size and what's the shape of that bird. So is it large? Is it small? Does it have a crest? Is there a big kind of thick bill, or is there a small and really thin bill? Is it a very long tail, or is it more short? Do they have a very large head, or does their head look a little bit smaller, right? So without even looking at any other features of this bird, what are you seeing just overall size and shape of the bird? And then after that, look at habitat, how they're acting, what type of food are they using? So are they kind of hopping around within the grasses? Are they catching insects from the air, kind of on a perch and sallying out to catch something and coming back to that same perch? Are they kind of moving quickly around the plants and you can't get a good look at them, but they're kind of picking off bugs as they go? That's another really good thing to look at also. And then from there, you want to start to look at coloration, right? So are there stripes or spots? Where are there colorations, and where is it just kind of plain? And then what are the colors that you're seeing here? So I pulled out 3 different birds here: the western kingbird, the yellow-rumped warbler, and the Savannah sparrow. What did I do?
It just goes off for a second.
Oh, I see. Yeah, the blackbird. But yeah, so these are 3 birds that if we just started with color, we might say, well, it's kind of gray and brown and a little bit yellow and kind of streaky, and how do you start to parse those out, right? But if we start at looking at, well, this western kingbird that I've seen was perched out on an open branch. It was going out and catching bugs that were flying, right? Sparrows don't really do that. And the kingbird also has this really thick bill. And then, the sparrow has a thick bill, but it's very short. It's more something that you would see for them to be using to eat seeds. And maybe the sparrow was more found along the ground, it's in the grass, and then the yellow-rumped warbler, it's got that really pointy bill, it's very small-bodied, and it's hopping around, it's gleaning bugs off of leaves and branches and stuff like that. So whenever you start at the size and the shape, what are they doing, and then you go to coloration, it really helps you narrow down a lot more quickly rather than getting caught up on every yellow bird that's out there, because there are a lot. So Guadalupe County, which is where we are today, has 341 species of birds, and I don't have time to cover all of them, even though I would love to. So if you want to find out more about these birds, there are 2 apps that I think are really, really great that can help you learn about this. eBird is the one on the left, Merlin is the one on the right. They're both put out by the Cornell Lab. eBird is really good for finding what kind of birds are in your area, and kind of just a list of like, what's local to me, right? What are the possible birds that could be here, rather than looking at every bird that's in every part of the world. eBird is really good for that. People will upload birds that they've seen within your local area, and then it'll have up-to-date lists for that. Merlin is really good when you're trying to figure out what is the bird that I'm looking at. So they have a step-by-step ID guide that kind of walks you through the steps that I just guided you all through. So kind of looking at size, shape, color, time of year, everything like that. And then what I love about Merlin is that it will ID bird songs for you. So if you hear a bird calling and you're like, what is this bird? What is it calling? And then you're trying to Google, tweedle, 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 weedle, 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 which doesn't work, and I know because I've tried. So you can just turn on Merlin, and it will ID which bird is calling. It's not perfect, just as no app is perfect, no software is perfect, but it's a really good starting point, and for a lot of common birds, it works really, really well. So these are really great apps, and you can take a picture or look them up later. Okay, so digging into a little bit more about specific bird species in this area, I'm going to start with talking about the good, the native birds that we have in south central Texas. So first I want to feature the Carolina wren, which is a bird that's found throughout the southeastern and eastern U.S. It mostly eats bugs, and it can be found nesting within cavities and anywhere where there's a cavity-like structure, so a lot of human structures also, so like flower pots, garage doors even, a lot of human structures they're really, really fond about building nests in. And the other really cool thing about this bird is that since they have a very wide range, they have different dialects of calls, right? So just how someone from, like the Midwest might say tag and I would say tag, same thing with these wrens, right? The birds that live in Florida speak differently, they call differently than birds here in Texas do.
You mean the rebel and Yankee birds?
Exactly. Another one of our local native birds that you'll find within the summer is the black-chinned hummingbird. This bird mostly, as you might know, feeds on nectar, but they will eat insects also whenever nectar is a little bit shorter, there's not as much of it around. They like to nest within trees, and they're really drawn to plants that have these bright colors of orange, red, or pink. So that's a lot of like your Turk's cap, your honeysuckle, and salvia species. There's a very, very long list, but anything that is a reddish tone and has like a little bit of a tube shape to it, they really cue in on those plants. Another thing about this bird is that the males and females look different. So the male is on the bottom left there, and you can see how does it get the name black-chinned from the male's black chin, and it's really pretty because in certain lightings, and it shows it really nicely in this photo here, you can actually see a little bit of purple on that as well. So it's not just pure black, it's also purple feathers, which is really neat. And then the female, because they spend more time sitting on nest, are much more cryptically colored. So they're more grays and greens and browns that help them blend in a little bit, so it's harder for a predator to find them when they're sitting on the nest. So males and females look a little bit different. It's the same species of bird. The next one that I want to highlight is one of my favorites, a cedar waxwing.
Pretty bird.
Yeah, they're very pretty. To me, they almost look fake. They're too smooth, right? There's too many fine, like clean lines on them. But they are real. They're one of our native birds. They spend most of their time up further north, but they do winter within Texas, so you won't find them nesting here. You'll find these really large flocks during the winter. They like to hang out in large groups, and their calls are really, really high pitched. It's kind of like almost a buzzing sound, really high. And one of their primary sources of food is berries, which whenever you leave berries out in the sun for too long, what happens?
Ferment.
Wait, what was that saying?
Ferment.
Ferment. Oh yes, sorry. I thought that y'all were saying burn it, and I was like, I guess the sun would. Yes, yeah. That's how we make wine, right? And birds can actually get drunk on these berries. So, and then their name is waxwings because they actually do have a little bit of wax that they produce on the very end of their feathers. You can see it on the wingtips. All of that red there is actually wax. We don't really know what they use it for, but yeah. And then another bird that I want to highlight is the summer tanager. This is a really, really pretty bird that is here during the summer. They eat insects, fruit, and berries, and they like to nest in trees and open woodland areas. So they really like suburbs, right? People's houses where there's kind of scattered trees, but it's very, very open. They do really well in that. And a really cool thing about these birds is they specialize in eating bees and wasps. They snatch them out of the air and somehow avoid getting stung by them. I don't know how they do that. The males are this really, really beautiful pure red color, and the females are this nice, like kind of golden or olivey yellow color. So again, the males and the females look a bit different, but it's all the same species here. And then the last of our native birds here is the red-shouldered hawk. I'm hearing some of y'all say stuff. Yeah, so y'all have probably heard them calling, right? They're very, very common to hear around cities. They eat small mammals, snakes, frogs, and lizards. They like to nest in tall trees, especially if they're close by to water. And they do come back to the same nest, the same area year after year after year. There was one site where the same hawk came back 16 years in a row. So it is very possible that the hawks you're seeing around in your areas grew up with your kids, or even maybe with you in certain areas, which I think is really sweet. So now I'm going to talk about the bad, but I want to kind of caveat, maybe not bad, but just misplaced, right? These are non-native or invasive species within Texas. And I'm going to highlight a couple of them here, the first being the house sparrow. Yeah, so some of y'all are throwing out the name trash bird because they are very common. They're not a native species. They're not one that we usually prize finding whenever people are out birding, but they are here to stay, whether or not we like it or not. So yeah, they're native mostly to like the old world. They do really well, as I mentioned, within urban areas. A lot of parts around the United States, they're only found within urban areas. Once you move out of the city, you won't find house sparrows quite as much. They were released in Brooklyn in the 1800s. They're not sure the specific date, but as a way to keep the moth numbers down, which probably worked, but now we have a whole other issue because house sparrows nest really early, a lot earlier than a lot of our native birds do. So when the native birds show up or start trying to make their nest, that spot's already taken, right? They have to move on and try to find another space. And if there's a lot of house sparrows in an area, there's really limited spaces for our native birds to raise their eggs and their young. Another one is the starling. So this is one that's mostly found within Europe, but also in Africa and Asia. They also are mostly found within urban areas. Whenever you start to get away from the city, you won't see them quite as much. A real sort of a fun fact about this is that they were not brought in for any other reason other than that someone liked Shakespeare and liked his works and wanted every bird that he mentioned to be found within the United States as well. So it's kind of a strange reason to bring an entire species here, but it did happen, and they're here as well. And unlike the house sparrows, which nest earlier, these birds will actually drive other birds out of their nesting spots, right? So create some issues for our native birds. But both of these are also very cool species in and of their own right. They're just a little bit out of place, right? So starlings actually in winter and fall, once they have their new feathers, look almost like they've got polka dots over their whole body, and they have these white spots on them. But then as those feathers age and as they start to break off a little bit over time, later on in the season, throughout the spring and summer, you'll see them looking more black, so just a pure black without those spots. And it kind of threw me off when I was first learning about birds because I was like, those look completely different. Do we have two starling species here? But it's all the same starling. Their feathers age and start to break off the very tips of it, and you lose those white tips, those white dots. All right, and now I'm going to talk about kind of the ugly side, like what are the drawbacks whenever birds and humans live close by one another. And one of this is that birds have a really hard time telling when things are a window or when it's an open space. If it just looks like sky and it just looks like branches and trees, they will try to fly through that, they'll hit it, and they will get injured and often die from that. And a lot of times it's not the super high-rise buildings that you'll see in like the downtown area that are causing most of these deaths. It's the 1 to 2 to 3 story buildings. It's those shorter buildings that are really close to the plants and the trees that they're flying to and from. Those are the ones they're hitting most often. And then also a lot of the non-native predators that we have in this area, first and foremost being cats. You know, cats are very, very good predators, and they're very good at hunting and killing things. They're almost a little bit too good because whenever they're outside, they'll just keep on doing that, and so they do kill a lot of our native bird species. It's one of the leading causes, or one of the leading threats for quite a few of our native birds. And then the other thing that we think about is diseases, right? So there are two major ones with a lot of the birds that are common within urban areas, mycoplasmal conjunctivitis and then avian flu. I know, I also said the same thing. It's also called Finch eye disease because mycoplasmal conjunctivitis does cause their eye to get a little bit puffy and swollen like that. Avian flu, and then a different strain of avian flu that was first found in Texas in 2022, which is the highly pathogenic version, and that's now found in 30 counties and mostly affects waterfowl, raptors, and poultry, but it can affect songbirds also. So that's kind of a bit of a downer, right? So I want to counteract the ugly with the beautiful side of it as well. So like, why do we connect with nature through birds? If we cause these negative effects on birds, and we have these urban areas that can be bad for them. Why are we doing this? And one of the big reasons is that birds are deeply, deeply rooted within human cultures throughout the world. So you see it within cave art that shows, the same cranes that you can go out and watch dancing along the mud flats. This is a traditional powwow dance. It's called the chicken dance that you can see if you go to powwows around the U.S. And it is based off of the lecking dance of the greater prairie chicken as well. So humans imitate birds, and we love birds, and we love to see them, and they're deeply connected with us. And so birding in your garden allows you to see nature close up. It allows you to get a good view at it in a way that not everyone really has a chance to. Not everyone can see a wren raising its eggs into young, and those young learning to fly and hopping around the garden. Not everyone has that chance, so it's really, really special that we get this close-up lens of birds. And what we choose to do in our gardens and yards does affect the wild animals who use them and live in and among them. And so I'm going to talk about, there are some steps that we can take to make our areas more friendly towards birds.
Those are the prettiest.
The painted bunting? Yeah. I didn't call them out,
You
but
hardly ever see them, but they're pretty.
yeah. These are one of our very coolest native birds because they look like they belong somewhere off in the tropics, but they're here. So now some tips and things that we can do to share our world with birds. So going back to that earlier idea of what do gardens provide for birds, it's food, water, shelter, and space. So I'm going to go one by one, starting with food. So what can we do for birds? First and foremost is to plant native plants. If we have more diverse plants, then we'll have more diverse animals that rely on those plants for different reasons. And so it's really good to plant a wide variety, forbs, grasses, shrubs, and trees, because there's birds that rely on all different sorts. So you want to select plants that flower and fruit at different times of the year so that there's always food and there's always cover and shelter for these animals. So both the evergreen trees and also ones that lose their leaves and have those bare branches for parts of the year. Also plants that have really diverse sources of food, whether it's larval insects, nectars, berries, fruits, nuts, or seeds. Anything that plants produce is generally utilized by birds in some way. And then also thinking about the types of variety that you have within your garden. So are there different types of plant species? Are there different plant heights? Do you have a canopy, that understory layer, and then do you have a ground cover layer also? Because again, different birds use different layers. There's some species that you'll pretty much only find in the very tops of those trees. Others that you'll find kind of below that, but not totally on the ground. And then others that really like to forage along the ground a lot. And there are more tips to this than I can possibly cover, so these is just a couple of good sources to look into. Sources that have like lists of native plants for your region and for your area. So I'll leave that up for a moment so people can get pictures. All right, and then also part of providing the foods that they would already be finding out in nature is kind of doing nothing, right? Is taking a step back and letting nature do its thing, right? So whether it's like not mowing a certain area to allow the grass to grow up, that provides cover, and then also allows the grass to go to seeds, and that's a source of food for them. Or just leaving kind of the natural debris and leaf litter and sticks, because that's things that insects are also found within. So this is an American goldfinch. Up here on the right, eating a sunflower seed that's dead and dried out, but it's still a very, very good source of food for the birds. This is a brown thrasher on the bottom left-hand side, and they're called a thrasher because they thrash through the leaves and the sticks, and so they'll literally you'll see them with their beak. They'll thrash through and they'll watch for bugs to scurry away, and then they'll go and grab them. So really, really cool.
I saw one morning I was like daybreak. I saw it's called a junco.
Yeah.
And there was these little tufts of grass, and they go up there and hop on top of it, and flap their wings, and stand back, wait for anything to
Watch
scurry
them
out.
go. That's
What in the
cool.
world?
That's very cool. Yeah.
Have you seen them do that?
I haven't seen them do that, but I've seen them do a very similar thing to what the
How in the world did
thrasher
they learn?
does, where they'll kind of like pick through, they'll like use their beak to kind of scatter things and watch us as stuff comes
They
through.
jump
So.
on there and flap. Jump.
That's me. That's
I know. It's like a
that's
monkey
really
with fishing for ants. And stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And the other thing is obviously Pesticides are needed in certain cases, you know, if there's a pest within the garden that you're really trying to manage and trying to get a handle on, or whenever we're thinking about human health and safety, or if you're just trying to not get swarmed by bugs the moment that you step out of the door, there are places to use it, but you want to minimize the amount that you're using, and you want to be smart about it, because whenever you're using those are going to reduce the insects that are within a certain area, and that's all food for birds, right? And then also whenever you use a lot of pesticides in a really large area, that's all running off, that's getting into the streams and creeks, and any extra stuff is just going to keep on going down the line, and that's going to keep affecting the bugs and then also the birds that are eating them. So just thinking about the way that we're using them, how much do we really need, and can we limit that? Can we pull that back a little bit so that birds still have enough food? And so I'm going to talk a little bit now about bird feeders. So there's a lot of different options. If you just Google bird feeder, 1,000,001 options come up. But as I've been saying, different birds utilize different sources of food. And so whenever you put out seeds, that's really drawing in things like sparrows, finches, chickadees, cardinals, doves, things that eat seeds as the large part of their diet. Suet is when the seeds are kind of stuck together into a brick with some kind of like sap or molasses, and that's going to get things like the downy woodpecker that we have up here, and up there pecking on that suet, and then also the painted bunting down there that is a more seed-eating bird. And there are some other options. So as I mentioned, a lot of birds eat insects, and so providing dried mealworms or soldier fly larvae will draw on things like wrens, warblers, vireos, and you'll see a lot of birds pop up in multiple of these lists. That's because there's some birds that'll just eat a lot of different things, right? Putting out fruit also draws in things like orioles, like this one right here. I'm not sure what type of oriole species this is. Do any of the birders in the room know?
Is it bullocks?
Bullocks?
Bullocks oriole?
I could see that. I could see that. Anyways, but yeah, and so it really draws in birds that feed on, you know, fruit and berries and things like that. Nectar, obviously, for hummingbirds, such as the calliope, I believe, hummingbird up here. And with nectar, what you're going to want to use is 1/4 cup of just regular table sugar for every 1 cup of water, and you don't need to put any coloration in it. Hummingbirds are drawn to red, but they're not drawn to large tubes of red, right? They're drawn to yellow or red flowers. And so just having those red flowers within your garden and then a nectar feeder also, that'll be enough to draw them in. You don't need to dye the actual food for them. And then yeah, as I've already talked about avian flu, we want to reduce the amount of disease that's going and spreading around. So think of whenever you're at like a large family gathering or something, right? And they're, I don't know, passing around some dish that everyone's scooping out of. Imagine if everyone was just taking a handful, and whenever it got around to you, would you wanna eat that? I probably wouldn't, right? And so birds are visiting these feeders like one after another. They're all grabbing from the same food source. So you really want to go in every now and then and clean it up. Because if they were out foraging just within nature, once that food source was empty, they would all stop going there and they would move on if the plant ran out of seeds or the flower didn't have any nectar in it or something like that. So within nature, they don't keep coming back to the same source over and over and over and over again, but they do for feeders. So we want to try to mimic nature, and we want to have that cleaned out about every 2 weeks. You can use warm, soapy water, but the best way to kill anything that's lingering on those feeders is going to be 1 part bleach to 9 parts water. But again, if you just want to use warm, soapy water, that's also a good option. And then yeah, throwing away any food that's not eaten is totally fine. We just, I would rather keep it clean and waste a little bit of that seed rather than having the feeder stay out there longer than it needs to be. And then yeah, if there's ever an area where avian flu is present, maybe you've seen something in the news about it, or if you see birds that look sick, like I had a photo of that bird earlier with it was a house finch with like a really red eye, or birds that have a lot of things around their beak, a lot of like spittle and stuff like that. Birds that look sick, just take those feeders up until it looks like it's worked its way through the local birds, and then you can start feeding again. But just being generally aware, right? We don't want to have feeders in bath sow where there's sick birds. And you all are going to hear me say this again and again, but keep it clean, right? Take out the old food, make sure you're washing things off. So now I'm going to move on and talk a little bit about water. So you can put out bird baths and water bowls. I love to watch birds bathing because it's just so cool. They make such a mess out of it. And then another thing that you can do whenever you're putting out water is have it so that it's safe for pollinators also, which are really, really good for y'all's gardens. And so you can have either shallower bowls or bowls that have rocks and other things in it that make it so that those, whenever they land on the water, they can then crawl out and go on their way. Whenever you just have open areas of water, they can land on it and then get stuck and end up drowning and not able to take off from that. So that's another way that you can make it friendly for both things like bees and also birds. Again, keep it clean, right? Think about washing it. Think about if your water looks really nasty, like it does here. Just pitch it out and put in some fresh water. All right, and then talking about shelter. So you can put out things like bird boxes or things that are more human built that birds will use for nesting, but it's also just leaving things like dead trees. You can have things like the pileated woodpecker right on the bottom of the slide here that are able to use that to raise their young in it. Again, having native plants. And then whenever you notice a nest, try to not disturb the area often. There's a myth that if you touch a baby bird, then the parent will leave and it will never come back to it. That's a bit of a myth. Birds don't have a good sense of smell. I've known research studies who went and picked up birds and handled them and even did things like drawing blood from them to do the study, and the parents came back without any issues. But it will cause the parents to leave their nest if there's constantly humans around the area and they sort of get the sense that it's not a safe area for them. They'll just leave the chicks and go. So you want to try to minimize the amount to which you're disturbing the areas around nests. And then if you see a nest starting to form in an area where you're like, hey, I need that pot, like I can't really have a bird nest in there, try to nip it early, right? So try to take out the things they're putting in there to start to build the nest, try to close off wherever they're getting into. If it's a cavity or like a hole, just try to close it off so they're not able to get in there. It's actually not legal to remove eggs and young once they're nesting, so you really want to try to get in there before there's any eggs, before there's any young, and then whenever there are eggs and young, just leave it alone. And then everyone say it with me. Remember to keep it clean. Yep. So after every season, or if you notice that the young has fledged, go in there and take out the old nesting, whatever stuff is in there. Try not to let it pile up like this poor nest box up here. That's not very nice. No one wants to raise their kids in there. So just rinse it out, clean it out, wash it out, and then have it ready for the next bird to come and use it. And now I'm going to talk about space. And this is one that takes a little bit to wrap your head around because it's like, isn't there space everywhere? How do we really affect that? And so when I think about space, I think about how large of an area are birds using. When you have songbirds and smaller birds, they have a really small home range. So it might be just like your garden and the area around it is their whole life, right? That's the whole area that they're living in. But if you have a larger birds, they're going to utilize the larger areas. And birds that migrate, so they move from the north to south with the seasons, use a really, really large area, right? And they might just pass through Texas as just a waypoint to go way farther up north or way farther to the south. So going back to that bird that I was telling you about earlier this summer, tanager, this is a tracking method that's called MODIS, which puts a very, very small tag on the bird's back. It's less than 2% of their total body weight, so it doesn't affect them moving around, flying, getting food, but it does ping off of MODIS towers. So all of those dots that are in gray on that map are MODIS towers. So whenever a MODIS tag is carried past that tower, then I think most of them are a 1 mile radius, I might have that wrong though, within a certain radius around this tower, then that tower pings it and sends it to these like data collections, thank you, yeah, so that people can look at this and see like where are these birds going, right? Because whenever we see them leave from our areas, they're just gone. But with these kinds of tools, we're able to see that these birds, this is just one bird. This is tanager number 45032, and this is where that bird moved, right? So really, really far. Like you see they pinged probably the Corpus area over here, but it's definitely not the only area where they're living. And so when we think about whenever we think about space, we're thinking about creating safer spaces. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the risks for birds is that they run into glass. It's harder for them to see where it's glass versus where it's open sky. And you can see on that window on the top right here, it's kind of hard for me to tell too where the windows are, right? I don't really blame them for trying to fly through that. And so there are ways you can make it easier for them to see that it's actually a barrier. It's not just open sky. And there's a lot of different methods. but something like film, netting, stickers, or things you can put on the windows. This is a really good one because it has these kind of lines that are spaced closely enough that the bird doesn't think they can fly through it. They just see like, that's some kind of barrier there. I'm just not going to try to get through it. So there's a lot of ones you can use. And then also we think about dark skies, right? So birds have the same natural rhythms that we do of light and dark, when they should be awake, when they should be sleeping. Not all birds are sleeping whenever we're sleeping, and not all birds are awake whenever we're awake. Some of them use the nighttime, right? And so we want to keep those cycles as natural as we can. We want to keep the dark skies dark, you know? And so, oh yeah, and then a lot of birds will migrate during the night, actually. So they're using the stars and the moon to move around. And if there's a giant bright city below them, it kind of throws them off, right? And we've actually seen birds steer off of course where they should be going south, and then they start going east or something because of the really bright lights. And so this is a really good kind of graphic here, because you can see, before they changed out their lighting, there was a lot of direct glare, so there was no covering on those lights. The lights were just going out in all directions around them, even up, right? So it wasn't just going down onto the ground where the humans need it, it was going up where humans are not needing the light that's in the sky, right? It was also a really cold light, so it looked kind of blue, kind of light, very, very similar to daylight or similar to the moon. So whenever birds are seeing this, it's harder for them to figure out that this is fake lighting, this is not a natural source of light. And then after they made some changes, one thing that you'll notice is that it's overall darker, but it's a little bit easier to see in certain areas because there's not that direct glow, right? The light is only where you need it, and it's not getting in your eyes, and then when you look away, then your eyes have to take a second to refocus. So in a lot of ways, dark sky friendly lighting can be safer also. And then notice how the lights, again, there's no direct glare, those are pointed down only to where you need to see to walk around.
And we had the dark sky president come and speak to us about light pollution
Awesome.
and ways that ways that we can reduce light pollution
Cool.
in
So,
our areas.
so I can just skip the rest of the slide. Awesome. But yeah. But what was I saying? Oh yeah, and then also it's a much warmer color, right? So this does not look like the moon, or maybe it does during certain times, you know, when the moon is kind of that pretty orange or red color. But generally, it looks very different. So it's easier for birds to tell that this is not a natural source of light. And then yeah, trying to limit the amount of non-native predators that are out there, because one of the issues that we see with outdoor cats is they're still getting food from humans, and so unlike a natural predator, which is where when their source of food goes down, their numbers go down too. Think of something like a bobcat or something along those lines. If there's less mice and things for that cat to eat, then their numbers are also going to drop. Whenever we're giving food to that predator, even if their prey numbers go down, their number's totally fine, right? And so that's one of the issues that we see, is that those predator numbers are not affected by the prey numbers. So it's just best practice for the birds to keep the cats indoors, just eliminate the chance that they're going out and catching them and eating them. And then yeah, another thing that I think about a lot in my job is urban green spaces and these natural areas within cities. And one thing that I want to highlight here is that if you want more areas for birds in your cities, more green areas, make your voice heard and have this input on, you know, whatever planning or whatever master planning, community visioning and things like that are going on. And a lot of people will tell me, oh, but just, you know, I'm just one person, like making my voice heard, it doesn't really make a difference, but it absolutely does. How many of y'all have heard of the book Silent Spring?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing some yeses. Yeah, so Rachel Carson published this in 1962 because she was seeing the effects that the pesticide DDT was having on birds. And this book, the name Silent Spring, comes from her warning, which is that if we don't stop this, we're not going to hear any birds in the spring. It's going to be a silent spring. And when people read this, they got really sad, because that's a sad thought, right? And that actually led to a nationwide ban on DDT. We saw a lot of bird numbers bounce back after that. She saved several bird species doing this. And then it also kicked off, it was one of the things that helped to kick off the environmental movement in the 1970s. So it really does matter. And so, just to do a quick summary here today, there are many different types of bird watchers, and there are many different types of birds. And especially here, we are very, very lucky to live in an area that has a lot of really cool birds, not just during the summer, but during the winter too. This is an awesome place to look at birds, because there's really a lot to see. And there are also a lot of things that you can do to help birds. If you have any questions about any of the things that I mentioned today, I'm happy to stay afterwards and chat with you guys. And just take some time. Look at the birds around you, even if you don't, turn into this crazy birder who's going and chasing birds around like the country.
Like you?
I don't do a ton of that. I take a bird trip every now and then, but I won't go to, another state to chase a rarity or anything. But I really love to take the time just to notice the birds around me. The lesser goldfinches, which are kind of similar to the other goldfinch that I was showing, but they're little yellow birds. They're my best friends during the winter, right? Whenever I walk out of my door, I can hear them calling and stuff like that, and it makes me feel like I always have, a friend around me, someone that I know. So just take a little bit of time and stop and notice things. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Here's my contact info here, both my phone number and my email. You're welcome to reach out to me whenever you want if you have any other things you want to chat about. And I just want to say thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, ask them if they have any questions.
Yeah.
How's a cuckoo bird really sound?
So I can do a pretty good cuckoo. So that's the common cuckoo, which is found within Europe, actually. That's what the cuckoo clocks are all based off of. The cuckoo, one of the ones that I studied was the black-billed cuckoo, and that one goes and then the yellow-billed cuckoo, which is one that's more common here in Texas, goes and that's what you'll hear.
You're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've heard articles about windmills being destructive to birds and not be destructive. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer is that windmills can harm a lot of birds. Whenever those blades are spinning, it creates an area of different pressure that whenever birds hit that, then they fall to the ground, and it ends up killing a lot of them. There are ways to mitigate that. So one of the best ways is that whenever there's slow enough wind speeds where you're not generating as much power, turning off them so that they're not, just still spinning even though they're not making a lot of power. Because that's generally whenever birds are going to be the most likely to be flying, whenever there's not these crazy winds, right? And so I think there's definitely strategies that you can use to minimize the amount of birds that are harmed by that. There's also windmills that rather than spinning this way, they spin this way, right? They have kind of a weird, kind of like a ribbon look around them. And those are much, much less harmful to birds because it's not this huge blade, spinning around. So there's several different options out there. So I think that it should be something we think about when we're looking at wind power, but it shouldn't be a reason to say like don't do it at all. So, yes.
So when I was younger, it was a big deal that we always had to clean off our windshields because of bugs. There were billions of bugs that hit our cars and our windshields. We don't see that anymore. Is this affecting our bird population?
Definitely, yeah. And that's one of the so that's a documented kind of effect that people, I think they call it the windshield effect, just because that's one of the best ways that you can see it, right? Is like when you're driving, how many bugs are hitting you. And there's a lot of different reasons for it that would take a while to get into here, but yes, it is an actual change that we are seeing, and it is affecting birds. Mostly the birds that have insects as a large part of their diet. So not to just keep on talking about my species that I study, but the black-billed cuckoo, their numbers have gone down 54% since 1972.
Wow.
And we don't really know why. There's not really a good, there hasn't been any studies like that have been able to figure out why, because we know very, very little about the species just in general. But we know that their primary prey is insect larvae. So it doesn't take a huge leap to think that that's probably one of the main things that's driving it. But lack of funding, lack of research on this bird means that we don't have that direct link. But personally, I think it is a major cause for a lot of the effects we're seeing on birds. So yeah, you have to save bugs to save birds. So.
Yeah.
The drought has something to do with it because the bugs need water like everything else does.
And I've seen beehives set up on this side of the highway, and they're going down here to the water, and it's right down 70-mile-an-hour cars, you get these splat, splat, splat.
Yeah.
River crossing, you know, where they have bees set up here, and the bees are going for water. But if, you know, if there's no water, there's no bugs. If there's no bugs, there's no birds.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can tell we really like them, don't you? You can tell.
I love
Yes.
it. I love
Oh,
it.
Catherine.
Yes.
Does Summit really give them a decent replacement for the insects?
I'm not sure about the caloric value of it. I'm not super clear on it. It's always best for them to have the food that they would naturally be eating, you know, so allowing like dead snags and dead, you know, like trees and stuff to stand for whenever it's not a hazard. Yeah, I can't really speak to that, so sorry I don't have a better answer.
What do you know about the green jays?
The green jays? What do you mean?
Well, I know they're coming, I've heard people say they're coming into this area. I haven't seen one personally, but I have some friends in Wilson County that have. So are they actually heading in this direction? Is it a hybrid? What is?
Yeah. So that is a range shift that we're seeing, which is where, you know, the range of the bird is moving. And so green jays are moving farther north as it's getting warmer generally over time, and there's drought and all these other effects that the green jays are being found farther north than they normally would. And blue jays are also moving farther west. So they used to be mostly in eastern forest birds. They do really like urban areas, and so they're moving along with the people, and they're found within the urban areas. So within this area is where you have an urban area where those blue jays are able to live, and you have just north enough where the green jays are starting to get into. And they found a hybrid grue jay back in, I'm blanking on the year. It was like a couple years ago, I think, but they were able to catch it and genetically test it and find out that it was a blue jay plus a green jay making a grue jay. And those kind of things are probably going to get more common as green jays are found in these areas more and more often. It was on the south side of San Antonio is where they found that one bird. So yeah, there's a lot of really funky things that we see as range shifts and changes over time, and humans bring birds where there wasn't that bird before, you know. So
That's right.
We still have some blue jays in our area.
I see them every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay,
I think-
so, one more?
I think we have one more question.
One more question?
So, I
Yes.
actually have a couple questions, but I'll only ask one to save time. So you mentioned quail early on in the presentation. With quail, I heard from a friend of mine that a lot of them are endangered, and if you see them, then you should maybe let a Texas Ranger know or something like that. Is there a possibility? I didn't get a whole lot of talks with her on it because she was mostly just tagging them in state parks and stuff.
Okay, cool.
But is it possible to get a wildlife exemption for quail?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, it all relates to the size of the area. So if you have a property that's too small enough to have a distinct population of quail, then you're not able to officially manage for it. You would need to manage for something like a songbird that has a smaller range. So it really relates to the size of the property, but you definitely can, and we see that a lot, that people manage that for quail. So.
Because I
We
know you
have a
can
lot
get
of rancher types
Yeah, cool.
in this group, yeah.
Yeah.
I want y'all to know that about a week or so ago, Anna sent me a list of other presentations that she can give, and I'm just going to let you know about two of them that I'm kind of interested in. One is just native species in our area.
Yeah.
The other one is living with wildlife. You think I need to bring her back? Okay, just double checking. Yeah, I thought she was great tonight. I got a little gift bag for her, a lot of little things in it, but my favorite part of the gift bag was the little mug that says Bird Nerd. Don't you think that she is officially a bird nerd? And April, are you ready to give give away some door prizes and things. And did we clap for her good enough? I'm gonna give you so much.